back to Neon Trash. I'm your host, Tommy the Hammer. Tonight I've got BC, I've got Johnny Rocket. It is Tommy's pick. And finally, no. I'm very excited to announce that we're going to be watching the movie The Last Dragon. It is a mid-1980s Blaxploitation musical martial art fantasy film of sorts. It sounds ridiculous, but there's a lot of music, a lot of cheesy martial arts, and I haven't seen this movie in well over 10 years, you know what I'm saying? I remember watching it back in like the mid-2000s, getting hammered, and it was one of those movies that was on the TV that entertained me, but I remember pretty much nothing about it, so I'm kind of flying in blind. What about you guys? Have you ever heard of this movie before, BC?
So I have heard of this, but simply based off of the fact that I used to work at our local exchange, and I would see this all the time, and I was always interested, but I just never like bit the bullet and bought it. But I'm actually happy to see that you have bought it.
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to it, and you know, especially like with everything going on in the country and stuff like that, you know, I feel like finding maybe some hidden gems that like highlight African American culture or you know, that type of thing is a good thing to do, and we're doing that now. So hopefully this is good, and I'm looking forward to it.
Rocket!
Well, I've heard maybe a tale or two about this movie a long time ago, but I really don't remember too much about it. I'm just looking for something a little bit lighter. You know, we watched some heavy flicks lately, and it's time to, you know, visit the other side of the coin there.
I'm gonna try and dig up the trailer. You guys know how that shit rolls.
Peep that shit!
I just said peep it. That's all.
Vanity, starring in her first motion picture. She's a rock video queen on the hit list of a maniacal gangster. And Timok, a champion searching for the power of the glow. This is Berry Gordy's The Last Dragon. The movie that has the music of Stevie Wonder, Smokey Robinson, The Temptations, Sarita, Rockwell, Charlene, Willie Hutch, Alfie, Vanity, and DeBarge. Plus all the power, glamour, and excitement of Motown. Catch the show. Get the glow. Berry Gordy's The Last Dragon, directed by Michael Schultz, rated PG-13. Starts Friday, March 22nd at a theater near you.
For me, like, this film was very entertaining. You had the music, you had the costumes, you had the ridiculous plot, and with films from this era, I mean, that wasn't entirely unusual. I mean, this whole kind of DIY film-as-you-go mentality was very prolific during the mid-1980s. You had Cheech and Chong, you had Pee Wee Herman, you had Weird Al Yankovic, and then you had this movie here. I feel like there's a few scenes that could have used maybe 5 or 10 minutes trimmed here or there. And, you know, let's face it, guys, this movie is not exactly narrative focus. You know what I'm saying? We've got a main character that's likable, you've got a villain that's strangely likable, and you've got a soundtrack that's just chugging and banging and off the hook. So where you're coming from as an individual in terms of this movie is kind of subjective. I mean, are you into the 1980s? Are you into New Wave? Are you into martial arts? And are you into Blaxploitation and what it means to an African American audience in the mid-1980s? So, like, there's all these questions, all these things that kind of come up as a viewer, you know? But for me, I feel like this movie was immensely entertaining.
There's so many scenes of seeing this guy, like, not know how to talk to the girl. You're like, dude, just fucking make out with the girl. Like, like, we're all sitting there like, she's trying to bang, and, like, there were a couple scenes where she said, like, I'm trying to bang. And it wasn't happening. And, like, it's funny the first time or two, but it does get old.
It does.
And so I think those are the types of scenes that could have been trimmed down.
Yes.
You know, those are what I'd focus on. But the scenes that had our villains were entertaining. The scenes where he's training the teenagers and the children, you know, training them in martial arts, those were a lot of fun, and they end up, you know, being important in the final battles.
They do.
The action was incredibly enjoyable. It was actually it was choreographed pretty well.
I thought so too.
And I gotta say, like, they probably put a decent amount of this budget to, like, getting Bruce Lee's movie scenes on the screen.
I didn't think of that.
But I enjoyed, like, this, you know, this mirroring effect of our main character and Bruce Lee, and, like, Bruce Lee being a part of him finding himself.
Yes, they were paying a respectful homage.
Yeah. And so overall, like, I thought that this was a really, you know, fun movie.
Yeah.
I would classify it mainly as a comedy, and I thought it was good comedy.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, some of the jokes were a little edgy, probably not as edgy for the time, but you hear them today and you're like, oh shit.
Yes.
But like, they were kind of good. Like, I couldn't even tell if I was laughing out loud because I couldn't believe that I just heard what I heard, or if it was like, it's still funny. But, I mean, this, I don't know, there's just a lot to like.
Honestly, I mean, if there was a movie to judge by its cover, it's this one. You can literally look at this movie and you could tell if this is in your wheelhouse or not. Right? If you just look at this movie and go, oh man, this looks like the cheesiest, dumbest shit in the world, that's what you're gonna get. If you look at this and go, oh man, this is gonna be hilarious, I'm gonna love this, yeah! You're gonna find it hilarious and you're gonna love it. Like, literally, damn, you know, if you're looking for a martial arts movie, this is probably gonna leave you wanting a little. If you're looking for a romantic comedy, this is gonna leave you wanting a little. There's so many parallels drawn between the Chinese and the African Americans, like, you know, dude, I feel you. Like, I feel both cultures in this movie are saying, dude, I feel exactly what you're going through because it's exactly what I've been having to go through. You know?
Wow, man, wow.
Honestly, you know,
It's
especially, I mean,
put.
when you get, you know, I mean, you see like the three, like, Chinese guys shooting craps, you know, dancing to electro, you know, talking jive, smoking marijuana, you know, you realize, oh, dude, that could be anybody. Like, so many different people can identify with those group of guys for any specific reason. Yeah. They really, I don't know, kind of tie, you know, anybody who's watching this into the film. You know, and if you really haven't, like, been able to latch onto anything or anybody in this film to that point, like, those guys really speak to so many different people on a number of different levels. You know, just regular working class kind of folks. You know, like, I don't know, at least maybe I'm high enough that I can identify with that kind of a thing. Being, you know, just, I mean, even though I'm white, like, I'm still poor, you know, still grew up poor as fuck, like.
This movie met all of my personal expectations. I feel like I was looking for a cheesy 1980s musical martial art film that was kind of poking fun at the old Blaxploitation films of the 1970s, because let's face it, the 70s viewed those films in a very exploitative way. This film, not so much. I feel like this film was kind of coming at it in a very contemporary 80s perspective. And so it was Blaxploitation in a different way. Go on.
This just occurred to me. This feels like Scream, you know, like not just Scream, but Scary Movie even, but for the 1980s, right? Like this is taking those Blaxploitation films, those kung fu movies, you know, and just really, you know, like poking fun at all their parts, like Scary Movie did, like those. Yeah. You know, just, we're gonna make fun of this genre. Like, this really feels like an early version of that.
Interesting movie. It's definitely a product of the mid-1980s, and I love 80s films. I love the wave, I love the aesthetic, I love the era. So I gotta say, for me, it's a real winner. It's definitely significant. 7.5.
Okay.
So, I did want to touch on one more thing as I fix this crust. So I wanted to touch on one more thing, and I feel like a lot of people, especially my age, from all races, might not quite understand like what Blaxploitation is, and I'm not going to get super deep on that. Might view these films as like being extremely stereotypical or playing up stereotypes, and they do. to a certain
Sure.
degree.
Yeah.
And so I can see like how someone my age could watch this movie and maybe not think it's funny or whatever, especially if we actually talk about the 70s ones where they're grittier than this. This is a lighthearted movie.
They're very lighthearted.
But all of those movies from the 70s and this one included, although there are stereotypes, and in this movie you had some Asian ones and some black ones, these movies, you know, Blaxploitation might sound like a bad term, but these movies were actually to highlight directors and actors and, you know, pretty much movie makers in general, all the people that are part of that process, to let them do what they want. And all of the ones from the 70s, and this one included, were, you know, the characters were meant to be badass. Even if they were stereotypical, they were meant to be, you know, good looking, funny, cool, whatever. And so these movies they wouldn't fit for today's time, but I do think they're significant, and I don't think that they should be viewed as like offensive, despite some jokes that might be outdated or anything like that.
Sure.
And, you know, the black villain that's in it is more of almost a pawn to some degree, but like there are people in every community that bring down their own community, and so this movie's kind of touching on all those issues.
Right.
So that's my little deep dive, is just on the genre itself, because I do feel like there's probably a lot of people of all ages that are just uneducated about the genre, and I'm not an expert, but I do think that like it's a significant part of film history.
Thank you. That's excellent.
Well said.
So overall, for me, like I thought that this was a lot of fun. I had seen it when I used to work at the Exchange, and while watching it, I remember that someone that I met at Kent State had actually recommended this to me at some point. So that was in the back of my head, and I can see why they did. It was really, really good. And I was actually, funny enough, feeling the exact same way as you were. I feel like it's a strong 7.5.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's a good looking movie. The music is amazing.
Yeah.
And other than like typical cliche romantic comedy stuff going on and maybe a little bit of a long runtime, like there's nothing wrong with this movie. It's just, it's a good movie.
The casting to the costuming to, you know, the sets they had, to where they were filming, to the way it was done, the way it was shot, you know, the homages that paid. We had plenty of nods to Bruce Lee and the films he made,
Yes.
you know, so that they obviously were very much inspired and influenced by those. I'm going to give this an 8.5.
Oh my God!
This was unexpectedly maybe in my wheelhouse.
Wow!
And
8, 7, and 7.
I mean, yeah, seriously, no, this was good. This is, you know, I mean, honestly, you know, there's not a lot of, you know, maybe you don't have, the young generation doesn't have a lot of time to digest a lot of Blaxploitation film, but, you know, if you're gonna pick one from the 70s, then one from the 80s, make this your 80s choice.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a good like starting point, you know.
This could be like your final Blaxploitation film. Like this could be like,
You want to jump
oh,
to that era where
this
it was
is where
really,
we've gone finally. Like
This may be like the end of the golden era of Blaxploitation.
Yeah.
You know, so if you want to just jump back to that golden era, start with this to work backwards. You
And
know,
I feel like the title itself, The Last Dragon, is I mean, I feel like that's on the nose.
well, yeah, where else would you start but the last?
Yeah.
True.
Right?
Do we need?
No, we don't need to go any farther. Well, I hope we've been informative to y'all. Until the next time, tune in to Neon Trash.
Oh!